here in 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. I will give the animals at the preconditioning facility their booster shot, and the rest of the animals. So I'm taking a look at everything I got going on. Okay, and right now the whole thing is I'm not gonna put myself at I'm not gonna add any more risk to what I'm doing because there's simply no reason to, right? It's not reasonable for me to add risk to my balance sheet right now. And so right now I got 10 animals that need to get I got animals at the preconditioning facility. I still want to put on another 50 pounds on them. I got a few animals that I really still want to put about another 50 pounds on before I give them their first shot. And then I got another set of animals at the preconditioning facility that need to get their booster here in about 2 to 3 weeks, here in about 3 weeks. And when I liquidate those in here in about a week, I would reasonably anticipate that I actually have very good quality grass. Even right now, the grass is pretty good. There is substantial biomass. When I take a look at the animals and their the quality of their manure and just how full they are and et cetera, I can tell that they are eating a lot of grass. And so the grass is of good quality and it's starting to grow in. And here about next week, I got out of the 7 days next week, I got 3 or 4 chances of it raining. It's probably going to rain 2 3 4 days next week out of the 7 days. So I'm not looking to add any more risk to the balance sheet simply because there's just no reason to. And my whole thing about it is, one way to think about this is like here in 5 months, okay? Here in 5 months, I will I will be selling 10 animals a month, okay? I will be selling 10 animals a month and like even right now if I went and just sold my 10 biggest animals, all right? I mean, I could if I sold my 10 biggest animals right now, okay, I could buy 18, 20 animals. I could buy 20 animals probably. I could buy 20 animals. I could buy 2 tonnages of fertilizer and I could buy half a load of grain, okay? 2 tonnages of fertilizer would be about $1,200 and half a load of grain would be about $1,200, okay? I probably don't even need the grain, all right? Here in about a week, I will have a lot of grass. Okay, I will have a lot of grass here in about a week. Even right now, I have I have a good bit of grass, and the grain that I have left at home, and the rest of this grain will probably last me the rest of this month. Okay, the grain that I have right now, it'll last me the rest of the month. I would reasonably anticipate to last me the rest of the month. Here in about a week, I'll have a lot of grass coming in. Next week I will fertilize the fields to I'll fertilize a portion of the field. I'll fertilize portions of it at a time, and I'll have plenty of grass. Okay, and so I'm not interested in. I'm not gonna the thing about it is if I added some risk to the balance sheet, okay, I mean I could push things forward. All right, if I whatever just added risk to the balance sheet, I could push things forward. But even if I pushed things forward, okay, it would increase my income by about $80,000 a year. That's it. All right, maybe I'd make an extra, 80, $100,000 a year. That's it though. And I'm not interested in risking because the thing about the risk is that and I've always the whole thing about risk is take small amounts of risk all the time. And I guess but when I take a look at what I got going on right now, right, early next year I'll have early next year I'll be selling 10 animals by about March. Okay, by about March or April of next year I will be selling 10 animals a month. Okay, and I'm looking to reinvest my earnings and all that stuff. And it's there's no reason for me to push things forward, with additional risk. It's just not going to do anything. Even like if I sold my 10 animals, well, my whole thing is like whatever, right? In my preconditioning facility, if I sold 10 of my biggest animals and I had to add 20 more animals to the preconditioning facility, and let's say that I even whatever brought 10 of them out here, right? I mean, there would it's just not worth the risk. Okay, it's not the it's just I'm just gonna you know the thing is, and I've been speaking about this for a couple of days, right? If I can do it 100, effectively 100% guarantee that I can do all of this in 2 years, but in all honesty, what I'm talking about right now is more of a medium term plan, right? If I can do all of this in 5 to 7 months, if I can do all this in 5 months, or I can do it all today, but if I did it all today, I would put myself at 20% more risk for about $80,000 a year. Would that make sense? No, I'm not going to do that, right? Why would I do that, right? There's no reason to. It's not going to do anything. $80,000 a year is not going to do anything for me. All right. I already make plenty of money. The 80 grand is not going to do anything. 100 grand is not going to do anything. All right. It's like, oh, well, and it just doesn't matter. And it's like, I'm going to get there anyway by about March. And when I get there, if I get there by March, or if I get there, by, tomorrow, what does it, it's all the same thing, right? It doesn't matter. Either way, I am going to be very rich the entire way. I'm going to do very well financially the entire way. So why would I for 80 grand, for 100 grand? I don't care about 80 grand. Okay. I don't care about 100 grand. It's not going to do anything. There's no reason to put myself at risk for it. All right. Why would I do that? And so, with all this going on, here about next week, I would reasonably anticipate that I got some good quality grass growing in. The grain that I have at home right now, the grain that I have at the preconditioning facility, it'll last me the rest of the month. The cattle are definitely eating more grass. I can tell from looking at the quality of their manure, and just looking at they're big and hefty. When they eat grass, it completely fills up their gut. You can actually see their gut swell up when they start eating grass. And just from the visual observation of the biomass material, it's pretty good grass. Okay, and I got a lot of annual grass coming in too. And if I fertilize it one time this next week, and I just get some rain on it, I'll have I'll have annual grass and perennial grass mixed in, and so that'll help with the feed values as well. And so right now, with everything, the whole thing about okay, so yesterday I was going to go into this a little bit, but I really wanted to think about how I was going to present this idea before I did so. And so the idea of investing first, okay? The idea of investing money first, and why it's such a good idea to invest capital first. All right? And the whole thing about this is in terms of investments, that my I invest all of my money, effectively all of it, into land and cattle, all of it. Okay, I actually invest more than 100% of my income a year. Okay, I actually, I have a balance sheet. I have a balance sheet full of assets. I appreciate the value of the assets knowledgeably. Right, I actually have assets that I can make the value of the asset go up myself. Right, when I put in my efforts, the whole idea is to make the value of the asset go up. Right, I don't work for money. Okay, nobody's paying me to do anything. I'm serious. I don't need anything from anybody. I don't even want anything from anybody. I don't even care if you die. All right. A lot of people are a massive pile of problems, borderline homeless, all sorts of problems. All right. Effectively homeless, a functional bum. All right. A lot of people are a massive pile of problems. And the last thing, I don't want anything from anybody. Okay. I don't want anything from anybody. I'm not asking for anything from anybody. I don't care if you died. All right. Do I want you to die? No, that's two completely separate things. When it comes down to it, I actually made it. I actually do well for myself. Right. That means something. I actually made it. This is not my opinion. I do very well for myself. If it comes down to it, I'll just be rich by myself. Do I want that to happen? No. All right. Plenty of people are more than intelligent enough to do plenty well for themselves. All right. A lot of people should not be on the struggle bus. Like 90% of the people are on a struggle bus or on the struggle bus. And why is that happening? Why is that happening? Right. It's sad, right? It's not funny, right? Like when you think about it in terms of it just is what it is. Like 90% of people are on the struggle bus, if not more. It may even be 93% of people are on the struggle bus, right? And they'll be on the struggle bus for the rest of their life, and it's not funny, right? Like when I take a look at the world, in 50 years, we'll have things in 50 years. We will have things in 50 years that effectively the average person has. Effectively, everybody will be able to buy it, like an iPhone. In 50 years, in 30 years, there will be things that effectively everybody can have, like an iPhone, that all the money in the world today will not buy. It may be like an artificial, it may be like a robotic lung. It might be like a robotic organ. It might be people might be their organs might be robotic, right? You may be able to get like a robotic organ transplants, right? Stuff like that. There will be things that are accessible to the average person in 30 years that all the money in the world cannot buy today. All right, and we should work towards a better, we should work towards a humanity that does morally well, and improves the outcome, right? Oh, and plenty of people are more than smart enough, and everything. Everybody should not be, there should not be so many people on the struggle bus, right? It's not amusing, and it's not funny, right? And it's like, the whole thing about it is, me, when I take a look at it, I actually did it. All right, I actually did it. I actually do this in real life. This is not my opinion. I'm not, if you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, that's borderline pathetic, and it's borderline idiotic as well. All right, because that how is you know it's borderline, like, it's borderline moronic. All right, I actually made it. I actually do well for myself. All right, and I'm not asking. I don't want anything from anybody. I don't want anything from anybody. I don't care if you died. I make plenty of money. All right. If you want to figure out what it's like to be in the cattle business, then go and be in the cattle business. Nobody's stopping you. All right. And it's this. The cattle business is not some free lunch. Okay. And I actually do it. I actually do this stuff in real life. Right. I mean, this is effectively my entire life. When I take a look at how I do in the cattle business, I effectively did so well in the cattle business that I more or less outperformed effectively everybody, every individual earner on the entire planet. Effectively, I out earned everybody. And a lot of people don't understand that. It's like, if I legitimately get, when I get to $2 million a year, a lot of people don't understand conceptually the idea of doing well financially. A lot of people don't understand that. Like, a lot of people don't understand that $2 million a year can easily turn into $1 billion, easily. $2 million a year can easily turn into $1 billion. It wouldn't even be difficult. And a lot of people have zero idea, right? A lot of people, it's like, oh my God, well, if he makes $2 million a year for 50 years, that's $100 million. $2 million only turns into $100 million in 50 years if you're a tard, if you're legitimately a complete moron, useless twat. Legitimately, like, if you legitimately make $2 million a year, right? If you bring home $2 million a year, and in 50 years you only made $100 million, you are that borderline pathetic. All right, the most, probably one of the most useless people on the entire planet. And if you think like that, you will never make money, because you conceptually are not connecting the dots. When you have money, right? Think about the economy as cash and things that you can buy with cash. All right, think about that. Just consider that as a possibility. And when you buy things that are as valuable as the cash, but they produce you a return, they produce you a dividend, they go up in value, they're equitable, right? Even if they don't go up in value immediately, if they produce you a dividend, and it's in something like the S&P 500. All right, the S&P 500, if you buy the SPY or the VOO, you get a dividend off of it. And the S&P 500, the whole thing about the S&P 500 is that it's effectively a gauge for the entire US economy. All right, it's a equitable stake in the broader asset market, okay? And the whole thing about owning something like the S&P 500, or the whole thing about owning let's just use the S&P 500 as an example. If the S&P 500 goes down in value, right? And this is the same thing with cattle. If the value of the cattle, if the price of cattle go down, if the price of the S&P 500 goes down, right? And And here's the thing, if you have nothing and you start putting $2,000 a month into the S&P 500, and the S&P 500, and I've already said, don't put all of your money into the market at the same time. Very important, right? Don't put all of your money in this at the market at the same time, because if you put all your money in the market at the same time, the market, there's a 33% chance it goes up, 33% chance it goes down, and 33% chance it goes sideways. Okay, if you put all of your money in the market at the same time, effectively, it's not a good idea. All right, so let's say you start putting $2,000 a month into the S&P 500, right? And so you start doing that, right? And let's say that over the next year, the S&P 500 drops by 30%. What does it matter to you? I mean, you put $2,000 a month into the thing, right? So now you put $24,000 into it over the course of the year, and over the course it dropped by a third. So let's say that you lost $2,500. You didn't lose $2,500. Your stock, the value of your stock went down $2,500 because you were buying into the stock all the time throughout the year. And let's say that the price of the S&P 500 dropped by 2% a month, 2.5% a month. If it dropped by 2.5% a month, and you were putting in $2,000 a month, I mean, you would have lost $2,500. What does it matter, right? It doesn't matter. You would have lost whatever, $4,000, and you wouldn't have lost the money. You would still have the stock. And if the S&P 500 dropped by 30%, right? If the S&P 500 dropped by 30%, what does, what's a, reasonable thing to think about, right? If the broader asset, what are one of the reasonable things? Like if the S&P 500 legitimately dropped by 30%, the bond market would have skyrocketed. Interest rates would be very low. Okay, interest rates, if the S&P 500 legitimately dropped by 30% and it just hovered it just went down 30% and went sideways, the bond market, the yield on the bonds would tank. All right, you could borrow money for very, very, very low cost. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the S&P 500 dropped 30%. You could probably, get a 30-year mortgage at 2.5% interest. All right, you could probably go to the bank and take a loan, refinance, and for a 2% interest, 2.5, 3% interest. You probably could. All right, 3.5, 4%. Right now, interest rates are about 6, 7%. It would probably fall in half. Maybe whatever, 30%. So it'd go from like 6 to like 3.5. Okay, 4%. You could borrow money for very cheap, and if you have nothing, what does it matter? I mean, it's like, the value of your investment may have gone down $2,500, but just keep buying it. Keep buying it over a long period of time. It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter. Just keep buying it over a long period of time. Don't dump all of your money into the market at the same time. And so the topic that I was looking to get into today, and I really wanted to, consider how I was going to approach this topic before I discussed it, because it's the idea of leverage, okay? And it's the utilization of leverage. And I do use leverage, okay? I do use debt. I don't use a whole lot of it, okay? I do use a little bit of it. And my whole thing about it is when I use debt, I don't just leverage myself to the eyeballs and throw something, throw a Hail Mary into the middle of nowhere. I don't do anything like that, okay? I buy tax deductible assets that I can reasonably, knowledgeably appreciate. And that's what I do with my debt, okay? And when I use debt, I leverage against an asset that I already have that is stabilized and producing a positive return. Okay, that's what I leverage against. And so when it comes down to it, like let's say that I go and I make $1 million, all right? Let's say I go and I make $1 million. And let's say I take that $1 million and I put that $1 million into a $1 million piece of land, right? The big benefit, is that if I make $1 million, right, and I put that $1 million into an investment instead of spending the $1 million, right? If I have $1 million cash, and this goes back to the idea of, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It matters what your monetary habits are. What you do with money is far more important than how much you make or how much you have. It's a lot more important. What you do with it is more important, okay? And so let's say I make $1 million, and I take this $1 million and I buy myself a $1 million piece of land, right? And this $1 million piece of land makes me whatever, $500,000 a year, right? And this is also kind of like well, I mean, I'll get more into it. So I have this $1 million piece of land and it's producing me $500,000 a year. And I go to the bank and I say, "Hey, banker, I have this $1 million piece of land. Will you give me a loan against it?" And the bank takes a look at it and they say, "Oh, yeah, it's a piece of real estate. We love lending against real estate and we love lending for real estate." And so they say, "Yeah, we'll give you 800,000, and we'll give you 800,000 at 7%, and it's going to be interest only. We'll give it to you at 7% for interest only for 20 years." And I say, "Okay, thank you, banker." And I think about it and I say, "Well, the banker just gave me $800,000. And if I use all $800,000, if I use all $800,000 and if I use all $800,000, I will owe the bank $56,000 a year. But the $1 million property is making me $500,000 a year. So if the $1 million property is making me $500,000 a year, and I owe the bank $56,000 a year, even if I used all $800,000, I could pay that all back from just 2 years of owning the property. Even if I used all of it and paid interest for the entire 2 years, I could still pay it all back. Right? So now it's like I get to hold the land, I get to hold the asset, and I get to use the money. Right? So, the asset produces a return. And another way to conceptually understand this, let's talk about this from a conceptual standpoint. If you have an asset that produces you a 10% return and you can borrow against 80% of it, let's say that you own an asset that produces you a 10% return, all right? And you can borrow against 80% of the value of the asset, and the interest rate is 7%. It's, granted that you don't like go and gamble it. Even if you bought a private jet, even if you bought a Lamborghini, that would be better than like doing drugs. That would be better than gambling. Because let's say that, and because the whole thing about a Lamborghini and stuff like that, but the thing about that is, like, if you bought a Lamborghini, let's say you bought whatever, let's say you bought a whatever, a $250,000 car, whatever, right? A cheap, whatever, decent Lamborghini. All vehicles are effectively cheap unless we're talking about super yachts, or we're talking about like rocket ships, or we're talking about private jets, stuff like that. Okay. And so, let's say you bought yourself a $250,000 Lamborghini, right? Let's say you bought a $250,000 Lamborghini and you drove it around for a year, and you put whatever 10,000 miles on it, and you took it back to the dealership, and you paid $250,000 for it, and the dealership gives you a $175,000 back. So you lost 75 grand, right? But if you do drugs, the moment you do the drugs, all your money's gone. If you gamble, the moment you lose, all your money's gone. It's legitimately gone to zero. Lamborghinis are not, they're a bad investment unless you actually like have a collector grade Lamborghini and you know what you're doing, and et cetera, et cetera. And you bought the Lamborghini as an investment, or the Ferrari or whatever it is, and you bought like a whatever, like an investment level of Ferrari or something. A majority of Ferraris and a majority of Lamborghinis are not good investments, okay? But even though they're not good investments, at least they don't go to zero. If you bought it for $250,000 and he turned it in next year and he took it back to the dealership next year and you put 10,000 miles on it, at least they'll give you whatever back, right? They'll give you 175 grand back, right? At least they'll do that. And so, but that's the thing. It's like if you have an investment and you own it and it produces you a 10% return, and you can take a loan against it at 80% for 7%, even if you used all 80%, you could actually pay for the debt and still grow your investment. That's where money becomes like this this whatever. But and the whole thing about it is like, don't go into leverages. I'm not saying use debt. I'm not saying leverage against your balance sheet and use debt. I'm just saying that like me, when I what I do with this, right, with the monetary system, what I do with it is I take leverage and I buy more assets. I don't even think about buying things. Like if I legitimately felt like I wanted a Lamborghini, I would just go and buy one. Okay. But I don't want a Lamborghini. What the heck am I going to do with that? All right, I will be buying myself a big truck here pretty soon, simply because I need one. All right, even if it's I actually do need a big truck, because it's like if I can go and bring home 40 calves a month, right? If I can go to the sale barn twice a month and bring home 40 calves, 20 calves at a time, that would help me grow my business very very well. Okay, it would help me grow my business a lot, and so I will be buying myself a new truck early next year. But if I want, but me, when with the whole financial system, all right, I use debt to purchase assets, and I don't use a lot. In terms of the amount of debt that I use, it's like 7% of my I don't use a lot. I do not use a lot. I am looking into leveraging against about 20% of my cash flow. 20%. So if I owe the bank $1, I'll make five. And the whole thing about me utilizing debt, the reason that I will use debt is to increase the amount of money that I make. I'm not going to take debt and go and buy things so that I can, whatever, right? So I can, whatever, have a Lamborghini and live in a mansion. I'm not going to do that, right? And the whole thing about utilizing money is when you have an investment, you can leverage against your investment to utilize the capital. And you don't even have to liquidate your investment. And if the return on your investment exceeds the cost of the leverage, you can actually pay for whatever it is that you're buying while growing your investment at the same time. You don't have to sell your investment to buy whatever it is that you want or whatever it is that you're looking to buy. I don't like the word want, because want I don't want anything. All right, I don't want anything. You know, realistically, I'm looking to challenge myself. Things I'm not I don't want more cattle. I don't want more land. I'm looking to challenge myself, okay? Regardless of the money, I'm looking to challenge myself and I'm looking to do better for myself. That's what I'm looking to. I'm looking to do better for myself. I'm looking to challenge myself. I don't want anything. But I'm introducing this idea, and when I introduce this idea, I am not encouraging anybody to go and take debt. Just understand that this is something this is something that most people probably do not even think about. If you have an investment and you own an investment that makes you a 10% return, and you leverage against 80% of it on a 7% interest rate, you can access the money without selling your investment. All right? You can access the money without selling your investment, and the return on your investment will actually pay for whatever it is that you're looking to buy, and it will also grow the value of your investment at the same time. So you can actually use, granted that you don't go and start doing drugs, granted that you don't start gambling, okay? Something like that. Granted that you don't start doing stuff like that. You know, like if I went and took a loan against my balance sheet, if I took a loan for a Lamborghini, I don't even need to take a loan against my balance sheet. I could just walk into the Lamborghini dealership and just have them give me a loan for the car, right? I mean, I could do that as well, and whatever, and that's why it's so important to invest the money first, okay? Because when you have an investment and that investment is producing you a return, granted that you have a good investment, my investment portfolio is effectively entirely land and cattle, commodities and real estate, okay? That is my entire investment portfolio. All right? I can take a loan against my assets And if I take a loan against 80% of my assets, right? If I take a loan against 80% of my assets and that loan costs me 7% a year, right? If I need to pay 7% a year for that loan, I can use all the money. And even when I used all the money, my assets, my balance sheet would still grow. I could actually pay for all of the debt and still grow my balance sheet at the same time. So let's think about this in terms of a monetary figure. Let's say that I have a balance sheet that is worth $100,000. Let's say that whatever, I have all of my assets put together. This is my assets all put together are worth far more than $100,000. But let's use a hypothetical situation. Farmer Billy Joe has a balance sheet for 100 that is valued at $100,000, and his $100,000 balance sheet produces a 10% return. So that would be 10,000. Annually produces a 10% return. So that would be $10,000 a year. And he goes to the bank and he asks for a loan, and the bank says, "Well, we'll give you a loan for $80,000. We'll give you a loan for $80,000 at 7% interest." $80,000 at 7% interest is $5,600 a year. And Farmer Billy Joe can still hold his $100,000 that's making him the $10,000. So even if he used all $80,000, he would still have he would still have his $100,000 investment, and he would still have $4,400 left over, right? He would still be able to grow his investment by 4.4%, right? Because he has $100,000 investment. That $100,000 investment produces 10% a year, which is 10 grand. He takes a loan against 80% of it. That would be 80,000. At 7% interest would be $5,600 a year. So he could use all $80,000, and he would still have $4,400 left over of positive gains. All right, and realistically, if Farmer Billy Joe is going to take a loan for $80,000, take a loan against 80% of his balance sheet. If Farmer Billy Joe is looking to take a loan against 80% of balance sheet and use all that money, you would hope that he doesn't start going and just drinking. You would hope that he doesn't go and just buy himself whatever, whatever. You would hope that he doesn't start doing drugs or go gamble with it. Maybe he buys himself, a new piece of equipment that he can make more money with. Maybe he goes and buys himself more cattle, right? Something like that, right? That's the big idea, okay? Take the leverage and then make more money with it. That's what I do, okay? And I'm not suggesting anybody do anything. I'm just saying it is what it is. It's what I do.